Is it possible to get some sort of executive summary of the use of this money? I understand that you're talking about taking $1 million now and $1 million then. But that, at least that first $1 million, so I could feel confident that the money was going some appropriate place.
Oh, it would go to the expenses of the general fund. Is there some?
Payment of bills, I mean, warrants, I mean, payment of bills, it's just, there's no money in the accounts at month end or at.
Can I?
Those would be, authorized expenses through the budget and or council authorization process that come up.
Okay, I'm trying to understand this for myself too.
Like payroll, I mean, I think the predominant amount of that's gonna be payroll.
Yeah, payroll is 78% of
The difference then in what we talked about, elimination plan, if we were moving $4 million to fund our budget, it would be one thing. But this is moving $4 million, if I'm understanding it right from our conversation here tonight and the paperwork that I read. We're just borrowing it to pay our bills we've already approved, and then as the taxes come in, we're gonna give it right back. So basically, we've already always done this in the past, but now since we're under a microscope, we're gonna bring it to council and have it done.
No, I don't think we did.
Okay, may I? And this way, it's come before council, and so it's more out in the open, so it can be, so we can explain away, since we have a deficit, how we're actually paying these bills, and then we're gonna pay it right back. Whereas in the past, not always, but we have done this in the past, but we didn't formally do it like this. So it's not like in the elimination plan where we were gonna move it to spend it, to fund more things that we were budgeting. Now we're just moving it to pay for the things that we've already budgeted, and then we're gonna pay it back. Right? Am I understanding it right for myself?
Yes, but I wouldn't emphasize the,
We've done it all the time.
We've done it before. I mean, there may have been lulls in the cash flow where ultimately.
Well, I thought in certain funds you could do that, and that cities do that. That's what they do.
They do it all the time.
Right, they move money around so cash flow can happen, and then you put it back. But there's always a paper trail of it, of what you did. It's not like, you can just, move it and spend it. You can't spend this, is money already spent.
We will probably still get noticed through because of, Act 179 and building funds. I mean, if you look at it, we need $4 million by the end of June. You have $2 million of Act 179 in building funds, $750,000 of Act 345, and $350,000 of the right-of-way and 911 dispatch monies that aren't being expended at that point in time. So we're already kind of pulling funds from there because they're in the general fund, they're not over in an enterprise fund like water and sewer. So we need $913,000 to make that whole to deal with cash flow for the month of June. So when we do it, July turns out to be the same thing, and then we start to become cash flow positive, and you can see the payback of those other special revenues, as the councilwoman was stating, those start to get paid back, and we're still cash flow positive as the tax revenues start getting collected from the summer tax.
So if I have this right then, what Mr. Delo is asking then is if we could get like an accounting, a summary of what you're borrowing and what you're paying. So we know where the money was, even though we're not spending it now.
I know, but you do that. You do that every month and every meeting. You get,
okay, well then that would be the answer then, right?
Summary, payments,
right.
The warrants, payment of bills, and
but
the cash.
But he wants something specific as to what,
summary,
where this is coming from, what we're paying. We're moving $1 million. What are we paying with the $1 million? Excuse me, gentlemen. So if we're moving $1 million, could we get? Oh no, but I'm asking you a question. Okay. So if we're moving $1 million, could we get a summary of what the $1 million is, going towards? No, that can't happen.
It's bills. It's payment of bills.
Okay.
What do you want me to summarize?
I'm
asked. I don't know what you want me to summarize. It's payment of bills. You just approved for the month of June payroll.
Okay.
For probably $1.7 million.
Okay.
Some of that's in what you're going to be approving for us to borrow against because we won't have the cash in the bank accounts to pay that payroll for all of June. So we're gonna need to borrow some additional funds.
Okay.
There are other expenses that are out there that are
1 second.
paying lights, energy, DTE, HAP, yeah, all your health
Excuse me,
insurance.
one moment, okay? So, I mean, well, the big ticket items, it seems like you could easily say, or it could, you know, be shown what those monies were going for.
It's a new transmission
Right.
and vehicle maintenance. I mean, all of those, you want all of that to stop and, I mean, I know you're asking for a summary of those, but that's what is
That's what
in
we
what you're
think.
given every month.
So basically, then we could take the paid invoice report and say, okay, 1 million went towards $1 million of that paid invoice,
Well,
right?
each month is gonna tell us, they're gonna tell us
Right.
each month, two months, we borrow.
Oh,
Tell us how
okay.
much we borrowed, but again, to detail out what it's being used for is,
I'm not saying each dollar.
yeah.
Right,
I mean,
yeah, the chunks, right?
That it seems unnecessary, given that it's the expenses of the general fund.
It's already
I-
It's
very
nothing unusual,
dangerous.
maybe the other thing to say
Right.
is, it's nothing unusual that we would expect to,
I would be a little bit more in, I know Dean's thinking in round numbers, but I would be a little bit more disagreement with Dean, because I would think we would only wanna, if we only need $220,000, we need 218, we'd only round up to 220. Because I don't wanna pay 1% interest for a day longer than we have to on
Right, exactly,
$1
whatever you're
million
short.
dollars. But, and as long as it doesn't make it even more difficult to kind of do that, the goal isn't to just,
And-
let's throw $1 million in
That
a
makes
kitty and
sense.
have a party and spend it, so it's.
When are our taxes due, I mean,
well,
September, so we might even, well, yeah, we wouldn't get it before.
Okay,
Maybe a few dollars.
well, we collect it throughout that period, but the major amounts get
Right.
distributed after September 30th.
This is showing, I know you didn't get this, but this is,
I
you
have it
it
now.
Yeah.
That's gonna show an estimate of
I'll
how
look
they
at it
anticipate tax.
tomorrow.
Hey, Jeff had his hand up for a while.
No, I was just gonna suggest that if they need a detailed cash flow statement, a forecast that gives all the expenses by month and then the shortage, then you show that transfer the shortage in, it goes to zero, and you start the next column, and then you get it broken down by category. Payroll, fringes, with
Yeah,
one page
one
summary.
way, sure.
And then that way you know where the money's, what categories.
Right,
Payables,
Dennis?
Fund is interested in being used for problem areas,
Right,
not to
Not
expend
to spend it
programs
into
and
new
things
things,
that,
oh, I see,
pet
sure.
projects. I don't want it being used for something that it shouldn't be.
We have to make
If it's
sure
an
we don't
emergency
approve
and we need the money, that's one thing. If it's,
There's nothing budgeted for it, so we went through all that for the budget and
Okay.
what's been approved for the remainder of fiscal year and.
So so none of it is any new spending, it's just the budgeted items.
Anything over $2,000 still has to come before.
Very good. Mr. Delo?
Yes, so I understand. We owe, Act 179, the building fund, $2 million, is that correct? So that's part of what would be paid with this $4 million.
No,
It's not.
that'll continue.
I see that it continues through until March of next year. The same thing with the money that we owe to Act 345. Is that gonna just continue through? So we're not gonna pay any of those bills?
Well, that actually becomes positive about October. And so that money would be replenished about October. If you go to the bottom line, the general fund cash balance.
So here, Jeff, it shows Act 345.
Right, she's just showing them in negative, but if you take, they're being funded now, so when you get here, there's a negative balance because she's putting that into the expense. Correct?
So these numbers are,
These
I
are
can't
whole by this
depend on
point.
these numbers.
Well, they could be whole, but the reality is that the Act 345 money is within the general fund. The Act 179 and building funds don't have their own cash account, so that money won't be paid anywhere. It'll still
Right.
reside in the general fund.
Right, but it would be whole.
It would be
if
whole,
you had to-
yeah, it would be.
How much is it?
Did we borrow money from Act 179?
No, it's, when we split the funds, we have the tax money that relates to those funds, Act 179.